In the heart of a bustling city, where life moved at a fast pace and tensions often simmered beneath the surface, an incident unfolded that would leave an indelible mark on everyone involved. It was a warm afternoon in Lincoln Park, one of the most popular spots for families, joggers, and anyone seeking a moment of peace amidst the chaos of urban living. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden rays across the sprawling green fields and shimmering off the small pond where ducks paddled lazily. Among the parkgoers was Maya Thompson, a young black woman whose quiet confidence caught the attention of those who crossed her path. Maya had recently returned to the city after completing her studies abroad. She carried herself with grace, her long braids swaying gently as she walked, and her flowing skirt brushing against the grass as she strolled along the winding paths. For Maya, this visit to the park was meant to be a simple escape, a chance to clear her mind after a hectic week at work. She had chosen a bench near the pond, its wooden surface still warm from the day's sunlight. As she sat there, watching children laugh and chase each other, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. Little did she know, this serene moment was about to be shattered in ways she could never have imagined. Unbeknownst to Maya, 2 police officers were patrolling the area nearby. Officer Greg Harris and Officer Mike Sullivan were familiar faces in the neighborhood, though not always for the right reasons. Known within the department as tough guys, they prided themselves on their no-nonsense approach to law enforcement. However, their reputation among the community was far less flattering. Complaints about their behavior were not uncommon. Accusations of rudeness, unnecessary stops, and racially charged remarks had surfaced multiple times over the years. Despite these concerns, the officers continued to operate with little oversight, their actions rarely questioned by those in positions of authority. On this particular day, fate seemed determined to bring them into Maya's orbit. As they made their rounds through the park, their eyes landed on her. Sitting alone on the bench, Maya appeared relaxed, her posture open and unassuming. To the casual observer, she looked like any other person enjoying the outdoors. But for Harris and Sullivan, her presence triggered something else entirely, an unfounded suspicion that she might be up to no good. Without hesitation, they approached her, their heavy boots crunching against the gravel path. "Hey, you!" Harris called out, his voice sharp and commanding. Maya turned her head, startled by the sudden intrusion, her brow furrowed in confusion as the 2 officers loomed over her, their towering figures casting shadows across her face. "What are you doing here?" Harris demanded, his tone laced with hostility. Maya blinked, taken aback by the question. "I'm just sitting here," she replied calmly, gesturing toward the bench. "Is there a problem?" Sullivan sneered, his lips curling into a smirk. "You don't look like you belong here," he said, his words dripping with condescension. "This is a nice part of town. People come here to relax, not whatever it is you're doing." Maya's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to remain composed. "I'm relaxing," she said firmly, "just like everyone else in the park." The officers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Instead of backing down, they pressed further, peppering her with questions designed to provoke a reaction. "Do you live around here?" Harris asked, his tone accusatory. "Where's your ID? Why are you carrying such a big bag?" Each question felt like a jab, chipping away at Maya's patience. She reached for her bag, pulling out her wallet to show her identification. "Here," she said, holding it up. "My name is Maya Thompson. I work downtown. Is there anything else you need to know?" But the officers weren't satisfied. Their skepticism only deepened, fueled by prejudices they refused to acknowledge. Sullivan leaned in closer, his breath hot against her ear. "You sure you're not hiding something?" he taunted. "Maybe we should check for ourselves." Before Maya could respond, Harris stepped forward, his hand reaching for her skirt. In a shocking display of power and disrespect, he lifted it without warning or consent, exposing her legs to the world. A gasp escaped Maya's lips as humiliation washed over her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she stood up abruptly, her voice trembling with anger. "How dare you?" she exclaimed. "Who do you think you are?" The officers laughed, their cruel chuckles echoing through the park. Passers-by stopped in their tracks, some too stunned to intervene while others pulled out their phones to capture the scene unfolding before them. Unbeknownst to Harris and Sullivan, one of these recordings would soon become the spark that ignited a firestorm. As the video spread online, outrage rippled through the community. Social media platforms lit up with posts condemning the officers' actions, and hashtags like Justice for Maya began trending nationwide. Protesters gathered outside City Hall, demanding accountability and reform. What started as a single act of cruelty quickly grew into a movement, shining a spotlight on systemic issues that had plagued the city for years. But what truly shocked the officers, and the entire city, was the revelation about Maya's identity. As the story gained traction, reporters dug deeper, uncovering the truth. Maya wasn't just another citizen caught in the crosshairs of injustice. She was the daughter of Mayor Evelyn Thompson, a beloved public figure known for her tireless advocacy for racial equality and police reform. This twist added a new layer of complexity to the narrative, turning local outrage into a national conversation about privilege, power, and the urgent need for change. For Maya, the days following the incident were a blur of emotions. Anger, fear, and disbelief swirled inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. Yet even in her darkest moments, she found strength in the support of strangers who rallied behind her. Messages poured in from people sharing their own experiences of discrimination and abuse at the hands of law enforcement. These stories reminded Maya that she wasn't alone, that her pain was part of a larger struggle for justice and dignity. Meanwhile, Mayor Thompson faced immense pressure to address the situation. As a mother and a leader, she grappled with the weight of what had happened to her daughter. Speaking at a press conference, her voice quivered with emotion as she condemned the officers' actions. "No one deserves to be treated this way," she declared, her words resonating with millions. "We cannot stand idly by while those entrusted to protect us abuse their power." The fallout from the incident sent shockwaves through the police department. Internal Affairs launched an investigation, but public trust in the system remained fragile. Protesters demanded transparency, calling for independent oversight and stricter consequences for misconduct. Amid the chaos, Maya resolved to channel her pain into purpose. Inspired by the outpouring of support, she began working with activists to organize rallies, workshops, and discussions aimed at fostering dialogue between communities and law enforcement. Though the road ahead promised to be long and challenging, Maya refused to give up. For her, this wasn't just about seeking justice. It was about creating a future where no one else would have to endure what she had. And as the city watched, holding its breath, it became clear that Maya's story was far from over. It was a catalyst for change, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope could rise from despair. The video of the incident in Lincoln Park spread like wildfire. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times across social media platforms, each repost accompanied by captions filled with outrage and disbelief. The clip showed officers, Greg Harris and Mike Sullivan, approaching Maya Thompson on the bench, their body language aggressive even before they spoke a word. Viewers watched as the officers questioned her relentlessly, their tone dripping with hostility. When Harris lifted her skirt without consent, the collective gasp from those who saw the footage was palpable. It wasn't just the act itself that shocked people. It was the blatant disregard for Maya's humanity, the casual cruelty of two individuals abusing their power. As the video gained traction, hashtags like Justice for Maya and Enough is Enough began trending nationwide. Protesters took to the streets, flooding parks, city squares, and even outside police headquarters. Signs reading "Black Lives Matter" and "No Justice, No Peace" dotted the crowds, while chants echoed through neighborhoods. Social media became a battlefield, with users dissecting every detail of the incident. Some pointed out how Harris and Sullivan's behavior mirrored countless other stories of racial profiling and police misconduct. Others expressed their fury at the audacity of the officers, questioning how anyone could think such actions were acceptable. Amidst the growing storm, another revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Maya Thompson wasn't just an ordinary citizen. She was the daughter of Mayor Evelyn Thompson, a prominent leader known for her progressive policies and unwavering commitment to racial equality. This twist added a new layer of complexity to the story, turning local outrage into national headlines. Reporters scrambled to uncover more details about Maya's life, painting her as both a victim of injustice and a symbol of resilience. For many, the fact that she was the mayor's daughter underscored just how pervasive systemic racism truly was. If someone with privilege and connections could be treated this way, what hope did others have? Mayor Thompson herself was blindsided by the news. When she first saw the video, her heart sank. She recognized her daughter immediately, her stomach churning as she watched the officers humiliate her in broad daylight. As a mother, she felt anger unlike anything she'd ever experienced, a primal urge to protect her child. But as a public figure, she knew she had to tread carefully. The eyes of the nation were on her, and her response would set the tone for the entire situation. That evening, Mayor Thompson addressed the press, standing behind a podium adorned with the city seal. Her voice trembled as she spoke, tears glistening in her eyes. "What happened to my daughter today is unacceptable," she began, her words heavy with emotion. "It is a stark reminder of the deep-seated issues within our law enforcement system, issues I have spent years trying to address. To see this happen to someone I love, it breaks my heart." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "But let me be clear, this is not just about Maya. This is about every person who has ever been mistreated, disrespected, or dehumanized because of the color of their skin. We cannot and will not stand for this anymore." Her speech struck a chord with millions. People praised her honesty and vulnerability, recognizing the courage it took to speak out so openly. Yet alongside the praise came pressure. Activists and community leaders demanded swift action, urging the mayor to hold Harris and Sullivan accountable. They called for immediate suspensions, thorough investigations, and long-term reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. Meanwhile, skeptics wondered whether the mayor's personal connection to the case would cloud her judgment. Would justice truly be served, or would political maneuvering get in the way? Behind closed doors, Mayor Thompson wrestled with these questions herself. She convened an emergency meeting with key members of her administration, including the police chief and representatives from the city council. The room buzzed with tension as everyone weighed in on the situation. Some argued for leniency, suggesting that disciplining Harris and Sullivan too harshly might alienate rank-and-file officers. Others insisted that decisive action was necessary to restore public trust. After hours of heated debate, a compromise was reached. Harris and Sullivan would be suspended pending investigation, and an independent review board would oversee the case to ensure impartiality. While the wheels of justice turned slowly, Maya found herself thrust into the spotlight. Friends and family urged her to step back, to focus on healing and processing the trauma she had endured, but Maya refused to stay silent. In interviews with journalists, she described the humiliation and fear she felt during the encounter, her voice steady despite the pain lurking beneath the surface. "I didn't ask for this," she said in one televised appearance. "But if sharing my story can help bring attention to the bigger issues, then I'll do it. I won't let them silence me." Her courage inspired others to come forward with their own experiences. Social media lit up with posts from people recounting instances of racial profiling, harassment, and abuse at the hands of law enforcement. Many thanked Maya for giving them the strength to speak out, while others offered words of support and solidarity. Grassroots organizations seized the opportunity to amplify these voices, organizing virtual town halls and rallies to keep the momentum going. One group even launched a petition calling for stricter accountability measures and mandatory diversity training for all police officers. The movement quickly gained traction, drawing support from celebrities, politicians, and activists across the country. High-profile figures used their platforms to amplify Maya's message, sharing her story with millions of followers. Donations poured in for organizations working to combat police brutality, and volunteers signed up in droves to assist with campaigns for reform. What started as a single act of cruelty had blossomed into a nationwide reckoning, forcing communities to confront uncomfortable truths about race, power, and privilege. Yet, amidst the progress, challenges remained. Critics dismissed the protests as mere theatrics, accusing activists of exaggerating the scope of the problem. Some defended Harris and Sullivan, claiming they were simply doing their jobs and arguing that the backlash was disproportionate to the offense. These arguments only fueled further division, with debates raging online and offline. Tensions escalated when anonymous threats targeting Maya and her family began circulating on social media. Security details were assigned to protect them, but the constant scrutiny took its toll. Through it all, Maya leaned on her loved ones for support. Her father, a retired professor, reminded her of the importance of perseverance. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he told her one evening as they sat together on the porch. "But every step you take brings us closer to something better." Her mother, meanwhile, encouraged her to prioritize self-care, insisting that she couldn't pour from an empty cup. Friends rallied around her too, offering hugs, laughter, and distractions when the weight of everything became too much to bear. Despite the challenges, Maya refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into creating meaningful change. Inspired by the outpouring of support, she began collaborating with local activists to organize workshops and community events aimed at fostering dialogue between citizens and law enforcement. Together, they drafted proposals for policy changes, presenting them to city officials and demanding transparency and accountability. Every small victory, whether it was securing funding for youth programs or convincing a skeptical council member to support reform, felt like a step in the right direction. As weeks turned into months, the case against Harris and Sullivan continued to unfold. Internal Affairs conducted interviews, reviewed evidence, and consulted experts to determine the appropriate course of action. Meanwhile, the Independent Review Board worked tirelessly to ensure fairness, aware that the outcome would serve as a litmus test for the city's commitment to justice. The process dragged on, testing the patience of protesters who grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of concrete results. Still, Maya remained hopeful, believing that persistence would eventually pay off. In the end, the incident in Lincoln Park proved to be more than just a moment of injustice. It was a catalyst for transformation. For Maya, it marked the beginning of a journey she never anticipated but ultimately embraced. Though scars remained, so did the promise of a brighter, more equitable future, one built on accountability, understanding, and unity. And as the city held its breath waiting to see what would come next, one thing was certain. Maya Thompson's story was far from over. It was a testament to the power of resilience, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope could rise from despair. As the investigation into officers Greg Harris and Mike Sullivan dragged on, the city found itself at a crossroads. The pressure to deliver justice was immense, with protests continuing to grow in size and intensity. Activists, community leaders, and even some within the police department called for swift action. But bureaucracy moved at its own pace. Each delay only fueled frustration among those demanding accountability. For Maya Thompson, the weight felt unbearable. Every day brought fresh reminders of the humiliation she had endured, yet she refused to let despair take hold. Instead, she focused her energy on turning pain into purpose, becoming a driving force behind the movement that had swept through the city. Maya's transformation from victim to advocate happened gradually, but powerfully. At first, she struggled to reconcile her personal trauma with the larger fight for justice. The weight of being thrust into the national spotlight was overwhelming. Strangers recognized her on the street, offering hugs or words of encouragement, while others criticized her for speaking out. Some accused her of using her privilege as the mayor's daughter to gain attention, while others dismissed her story altogether, claiming it was exaggerated or staged. These criticisms stung, but Maya chose not to engage. She understood that detractors would always exist, but their voices couldn't drown out the millions who stood with her. One of the most significant turning points came when Maya attended her first protest rally. Organized by local activists, the event drew thousands of people to the steps of City Hall. Speakers shared harrowing tales of encounters with law enforcement, highlighting patterns of abuse and systemic neglect. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding. Looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a mix of fear and determination. "I didn't ask for this," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But if my story can help shine a light on what so many of you have experienced, then I will keep telling it. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us." Her words resonated deeply, earning thunderous applause. People chanted her name, holding up signs that read, "We stand with Maya and justice for all." For the first time since the incident, Maya felt a sense of solidarity. She realized she wasn't alone. She was part of a collective struggle against injustice. That realization gave her strength, propelling her forward in ways she hadn't imagined. Inspired by the support she received, Maya decided to take her activism to the next level. Alongside trusted allies, she founded an organization called Voices Unsilenced, dedicated to amplifying marginalized voices and advocating for systemic change. The group hosted workshops, town halls, and educational programs aimed at bridging the gap between communities and law enforcement. They also launched a mentorship initiative for young people affected by racial profiling, providing them with resources and guidance to navigate challenges they faced daily. Through these efforts, Maya hoped to create lasting impact, ensuring that no one else would suffer the way she had. Meanwhile, Mayor Evelyn Thompson worked tirelessly to address the systemic issues exposed by her daughter's ordeal. She convened a series of high-level meetings with law enforcement officials, civil rights advocates, and policy experts to draft comprehensive reform proposals. Among the recommendations were stricter accountability measures for officers, mandatory de-escalation training, and increased transparency in disciplinary proceedings. The mayor also pushed for the implementation of body cameras for all officers, arguing that technology could serve as both a deterrent and a tool for accountability. However, not everyone welcomed these changes. Within the police department, resistance simmered beneath the surface. Some officers viewed the proposed reforms as an attack on their profession, accusing the mayor of undermining their authority. Anonymous messages criticizing the administration began circulating online, with some even targeting Maya directly. Security around the Thompson family tightened, but the threats did little to deter them. If anything, they reinforced the need for meaningful reform. Public opinion remained divided. While many supported the mayor's efforts, others questioned whether the changes went far enough. Critics argued that cosmetic adjustments wouldn't address the root causes of systemic racism and police misconduct. They called for more radical solutions, such as defunding the police and reallocating resources to social services. These debates sparked heated discussions across the city, with citizens gathering in parks, coffee shops, and community centers to share their perspectives. Despite differing viewpoints, one thing was clear: the status quo was no longer acceptable. Amidst the turmoil, Maya continued to find solace in small victories. One particularly memorable moment occurred during a meeting with city council members. After weeks of lobbying, she successfully convinced several key figures to support funding for a pilot program aimed at improving relations between police officers and minority communities. The program included joint training sessions, cultural sensitivity workshops, and opportunities for open dialogue. Though it was just a start, Maya saw it as proof that progress was possible. Another source of inspiration came from the stories she heard from others. During a Voices Unsilenced event, a young man named Jamal shared his experience of being stopped multiple times by police simply for walking home from school. His voice cracked with emotion as he described how each encounter left him feeling powerless and afraid. Yet despite the hardships, Jamal expressed hope that things could change. "If we keep fighting," he said, "we can make this world better, not just for ourselves but for future generations." Moments like these reminded Maya why she had chosen to speak out. Her journey wasn't easy, but it was necessary. By sharing her story and standing alongside others, she was helping to dismantle barriers that had existed for far too long. And though the road ahead promised to be difficult, she knew she wasn't walking it alone. As winter approached, the protests began to taper off, replaced by quieter forms of resistance. Activists shifted their focus to grassroots organizing, building networks of support and laying the groundwork for long-term change. Maya threw herself into this work, traveling to other cities to connect with like-minded individuals and learn from their experiences. She discovered that the issues facing her hometown were not unique. Similar struggles played out across the country, uniting people in a shared quest for justice. Back in Lincoln Park, where the incident had unfolded months earlier, life slowly returned to normal. Families resumed their weekend picnics, joggers, laced up their shoes for evening runs, and children laughed as they chased ducks by the pond. But for Maya, the park carried new meaning. It was no longer just a place of tranquility. It was a symbol of resilience, a reminder of how far she had come and how much farther she still had to go. By year's end, the investigation into Officers Harris and Sullivan reached its conclusion. Both men were formally charged with misconduct and violation of civil rights, their trial set to begin early the following spring. Though the outcome remained uncertain, the charges represented a step toward accountability, a message that abuses of power would not be tolerated. For Maya and her supporters, it was a bittersweet victory. Justice might be delayed, but it was no longer out of reach. Reflecting on everything that had transpired, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude. She thought about the strangers who had rallied behind her, the activists who had guided her, and the loved ones who had held her up when she faltered. Most of all, she thought about the countless others who continued to fight for dignity and respect in a world that often denied them both. Their courage inspired her to keep going, to keep pushing for a future where everyone could walk freely, without fear of judgment or harm. Though scars remained, both visible and invisible, Maya knew she had grown stronger because of them. She had learned that pain could be transformed into power, that vulnerability could become a source of strength, and as she looked toward the horizon, she allowed herself to dream of a day when stories like hers would no longer shock or outrage, but instead serve as reminders of how far society had come. Until then, she vowed to keep speaking, keep fighting, and keep believing in the possibility of change. The trial of Officers Greg Harris and Mike Sullivan began on a cold morning in early spring, the courtroom packed with spectators eager to witness what many considered a defining moment for justice in the city. Reporters jostled for space near the front, their cameras clicking incessantly as the defendants entered the room. Harris and Sullivan, once confident figures in their uniforms, now appeared subdued, their expressions unreadable as they took their seats beside their attorneys. Across the aisle sat Maya Thompson, flanked by her mother, Mayor Evelyn Thompson, and a team of supporters who had become like family over the past months. Her presence was calm, but resolute, a testament to the strength she had cultivated throughout this ordeal. The prosecution opened its case with a powerful statement, painting a vivid picture of the events that unfolded in Lincoln Park. They argued that Harris and Sullivan's actions were not isolated incidents of misconduct, but part of a broader pattern of abuse rooted in systemic racism. Evidence included the viral video of the incident, testimonies from witnesses at the park, and records of prior complaints filed against the officers. Each piece of evidence added weight to the argument that these men had abused their authority, using their badges as tools of oppression rather than protection. For Maya, sitting through the proceedings was emotionally exhausting. Hearing her, experience dissected in detail brought back memories she had worked hard to process. Yet she remained steadfast, knowing her participation was crucial. When it was her turn to testify, she walked to the stand with quiet determination. The prosecutor guided her gently through her account of the day, allowing her to recount the humiliation and fear she felt when Harris lifted her skirt without consent. Her voice wavered at times, but she maintained composure, her words carrying the weight of truth. "You didn't ask for any of this, did you?" the prosecutor asked during one poignant exchange. "No, I didn't," Maya replied softly. "I was just trying to enjoy a peaceful afternoon in the park. Instead, I became a target because of how I look." Her testimony resonated deeply with those in attendance, including jurors who exchanged solemn glances. Later, when cross-examined by the defense, Maya faced aggressive questioning designed to undermine her credibility. The attorneys suggested she had provoked the officers or exaggerated the severity of the incident, but Maya stood firm, refusing to let them twist her narrative. By the time she stepped down from the stand, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. Hers was a story of resilience in the face of injustice. As the trial progressed, other witnesses took the stand, each adding layers to the case. A woman named Sarah Chen, who had recorded the viral video, described how horrified she felt watching the interaction unfold. "It wasn't just about what happened to Maya," she said. "It was about how casually they treated her, as if she didn't matter." Another witness, a retired police officer turned whistleblower, spoke about the culture within law enforcement that often shielded bad actors from accountability. His testimony painted a grim picture of institutional rot, further bolstering the prosecution's argument. Meanwhile, the defense attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's claims. They portrayed Harris and Sullivan as dedicated public servants caught in an unfortunate situation. Their lawyers argued that the officers were simply doing their jobs, responding to perceived threats based on training protocols. However, these arguments fell flat in light of damning evidence showing a history of discriminatory behavior. Records revealed multiple complaints against both men, none of which had resulted in serious consequences. Proof, according to the prosecution, that unchecked power only emboldened misconduct. Outside the courthouse, tensions simmered. Protesters gathered daily, holding signs and chanting slogans demanding justice. Activists organized vigils, lighting candles in memory of others who had suffered similar fates but never received closure. Meanwhile, counter-protests emerged, led by individuals defending the officers and accusing the movement of vilifying law enforcement. These opposing forces clashed occasionally, underscoring the deep divisions gripping the city. Yet despite the chaos, Maya remained focused on the bigger picture. She understood that true change required navigating complexity and confronting uncomfortable truths. Throughout the trial, Voices Unsilenced, the organization Maya co-founded, continued its work, amplifying marginalized voices and pushing for systemic reform. The group hosted community forums where citizens could share their experiences with law enforcement, creating a platform for dialogue and healing. One particularly impactful event featured survivors of police brutality alongside former officers, willing to acknowledge flaws within the system. Together, they discussed ways to rebuild trust and foster mutual respect. These conversations planted seeds of hope, proving that even in the most polarized environments, understanding was possible. Mayor Thompson also played a pivotal role during this period. Leveraging her position, she introduced sweeping policy, changes aimed at addressing the root causes of police misconduct. Among the measures were initiatives to diversify hiring practices, enhance accountability mechanisms, and increase funding for mental health resources within communities disproportionately affected by crime. While critics accused her of exploiting her daughter's trauma for political gain, supporters praised her bold leadership, viewing her actions as long overdue steps toward equity. As closing arguments approached, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Both sides delivered impassioned speeches, urging jurors to consider the broader implications of their decision. The prosecution implored them to send a message that abuse of power would not be tolerated, while the defense pleaded for leniency, arguing that punishing Harris and Sullivan would set a dangerous precedent for law enforcement nationwide. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse as news spread, tears streaming down faces of relief and triumph. Though justice had been served in this instance, Maya knew the fight was far from over. Systemic issues couldn't be resolved overnight, and countless others still bore the scars of discrimination and violence. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace, reflecting on how far she had come. From a young woman humiliated in a park to a symbol of courage and change, her journey exemplified the transformative power of resilience. And as she looked ahead, she vowed to continue advocating for a world where everyone could live free from fear, not just for herself but for future generations. The guilty verdict against officers Greg Harris and Mike Sullivan sent shockwaves through the city, a moment of reckoning that many had hoped for, but few truly believed would come. As the judge read out the decision, Maya Thompson sat silently in the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly together. Her mother, Mayor Evelyn Thompson, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, tears welling up in her eyes. For Maya, the verdict was more than just a legal outcome. It was validation. It affirmed that what happened to her wasn't acceptable, that her pain mattered, and that those who abused their power could be held accountable. Outside the courthouse, cheers erupted as news spread. Protesters celebrated with hugs and applause, some breaking into chants of "Justice served," while others wept openly, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. But even amidst the jubilation, Maya understood that this victory was bittersweet. While Harris and Sullivan faced consequences for their actions, countless others who had endured similar injustices remained unheard and unseen. The verdict didn't erase centuries of systemic racism or dismantle the structures that allowed such abuses to persist. It was a step forward, yes, but only one small step on a long and winding road toward true equality. Determined not to let complacency take root, Maya resolved to channel the momentum from the trial into sustained action. She knew the fight was far from over. In the weeks following the verdict, Voices Unsilenced, the organization Maya co-founded, gained even greater traction. Donations poured in, enabling the group to expand its reach and deepen its impact. They launched new initiatives aimed at addressing the root causes of police misconduct, including educational campaigns to raise awareness about racial profiling, and workshops designed to equip community members with tools to advocate for themselves. One particularly ambitious project involved partnering with local schools to teach students about civic engagement and activism, empowering the next generation to challenge injustice wherever they encountered it. Maya also began collaborating with lawmakers to push for legislative reforms at both the state and national levels. Drawing on her experiences and insights gained through grassroots organizing, she testified before committees, sharing stories from survivors of police brutality, and urging politicians to prioritize accountability and transparency. Her eloquence and passion made her a powerful voice in these discussions, earning her respect across party lines. Lawmakers introduced bills inspired by her advocacy, proposing measures such as independent oversight boards for law enforcement, agencies, mandatory psychological evaluations for officers, and increased funding for community-based programs aimed at reducing crime without relying solely on policing. Meanwhile, Mayor Thompson continued her efforts to transform the city's approach to public safety. Building on the momentum generated by her daughter's case, she unveiled a comprehensive reform package dubbed the Equity and Justice Initiative. At its core was a commitment to reimagining the role of law enforcement, shifting focus away from punitive measures and toward preventative strategies. Key components included reallocating portions of the police budget to fund social services like mental health counseling, job training, and affordable housing initiatives. Critics argued that such moves undermined public safety, but supporters hailed them as innovative solutions to long-standing problems. Public reaction to the mayor's proposals was mixed. Some residents expressed skepticism, fearing that reducing police presence might lead to an increase in crime. Others welcomed the changes, seeing them as necessary steps toward creating a fairer and more compassionate society. Community meetings became arenas for heated debates, with voices on all sides vying to be heard. Through it all, Maya played a pivotal role in fostering dialogue, encouraging people to listen to perspectives different from their own. She often reminded audiences that progress required compromise and patience, urging everyone to stay committed to the shared goal of building a better future. Amidst the whirlwind of activity, Maya found solace in moments of quiet reflection. Spending time with loved ones helped ground her, reminding her of the values that guided her journey. Friends marveled at how much she had grown since the incident in Lincoln Park, noting her newfound confidence and resilience. Yet beneath the surface, Maya still grappled with lingering trauma. Nights were sometimes restless, haunted by memories of the humiliation she endured. Therapy sessions provided a safe space to process these emotions, allowing her to confront her pain head-on rather than suppress it. Slowly but surely, she learned to carry her scars not as burdens but as reminders of her strength. One evening, as she strolled through Lincoln Park, the same spot where everything had changed, Maya paused by the pond. Ducks floated lazily on the water, their reflections rippling gently in the fading light. She thought about how life had transformed since that fateful day. What started as a personal tragedy had blossomed into a movement, uniting strangers in a shared quest for justice. Each person she met along the way had left an indelible mark on her journey, teaching her lessons about courage, empathy, and perseverance. And though challenges lay ahead, she felt hopeful. Hopeful because she wasn't alone. Millions stood beside her, ready to continue the fight. Back at home, Maya reflected on the broader implications of her story. It wasn't just about holding two officers accountable. It was about exposing the cracks in a system designed to protect some while oppressing others. It was about shining a light on the everyday indignities faced by marginalized communities, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths. And most importantly, it was about inspiring others to believe in the possibility of change. Every speech she gave, every workshop she led, every policy she influenced, all of it contributed to a larger narrative of resistance and renewal. As spring turned to summer, Maya threw herself into planning a major event, the first annual Voices Unsilenced Summit, a gathering of activists, scholars, policymakers, and survivors dedicated to advancing racial equity and justice. The summit aimed to bring together diverse voices under one roof, fostering collaboration and innovation. Panels, keynote speeches, and breakout sessions covered topics ranging from criminal justice reform to economic empowerment, offering attendees practical tools to effect meaningful change. Organizers expected hundreds of participants, further evidence of the growing appetite for reform. On the day of the summit, energy buzzed through the venue as people from all walks of life came together to learn, share, and connect. Maya delivered the opening remarks, her voice steady and impassioned. "We are here today because we refuse to accept the status quo," she declared, drawing thunderous applause. "We are here because we know another world is possible, a world where no one has to live in fear of those sworn to protect them. Let us leave this room not just inspired, but equipped to make that vision a reality." By the end of the summit, alliances had formed, ideas had taken shape, and commitments had been made. Attendees departed with renewed determination, carrying the spirit of the event back to their respective communities. For Maya, watching this collective energy unfold was deeply fulfilling. It reinforced her belief that change was possible when people worked together, leveraging their unique strengths for a common purpose. Looking ahead, Maya recognized that the path forward would remain fraught with obstacles. Resistance to reform would persist, fueled by fear and ignorance. Progress might feel slow, incremental victories overshadowed by setbacks. But she refused to lose sight of the bigger picture. Every small win added up, chipping away at the walls of injustice brick by brick. And though the road stretched long before her, she walked it with unwavering resolve, knowing she carried the hopes and dreams of countless others with her. For Maya Thompson, the journey wasn't just about seeking justice. It was about creating a legacy of resilience, compassion, and unyielding hope. A legacy that said even in the darkest moments light could break through, and as she gazed toward the horizon, she allowed herself to dream of a day when stories like hers wouldn't inspire outrage, but instead serve as proof of how far humanity had come. Until then, she vowed to keep speaking, keep fighting, and keep believing in the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Months after the guilty verdict and the success of the Voices Unsilenced Summit, Maya Thompson found herself reflecting on how much her life, and the lives of others, had changed. What started as a deeply personal trauma had grown into something far greater, a movement that inspired hope, sparked conversations, and pushed communities to confront uncomfortable truths about systemic racism and police misconduct. The journey had been grueling, filled with moments of despair, anger, and exhaustion, but it had also been transformative. For Maya, the fight wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about building a better world for everyone. The impact of her story rippled across the nation, igniting discussions in cities far beyond her own. People from all walks of life reached out to share their own experiences of discrimination and abuse at the hands of law enforcement. Many expressed gratitude for Maya's courage, saying her willingness to speak out gave them the strength to do the same. Some sent letters detailing decades-old injustices they had buried deep inside. Others shared videos recounting recent encounters that left them shaken. Each story added weight to the collective call for change, reminding Maya that she was part of something much larger than herself. One particularly poignant message came from a grandmother named Ruth, who wrote to thank Maya for standing up against injustice. "I've lived through segregation, watched my brothers and sisters beaten during marches, and seen my children treated like criminals simply because of the color of their skin," Ruth wrote. "But your voice gives me hope. You remind me that even in the darkest times there are people willing to fight for what's right." Reading those words brought tears to Maya's eyes. It was a reminder that while progress might feel slow, every effort mattered. As the months passed, voices unsilenced continued to grow, becoming a beacon of hope for marginalized communities. The organization launched new programs aimed at fostering healing and resilience among survivors of police brutality. One initiative, called Healing Circles, provided safe spaces for individuals to share their stories without judgment or fear of retaliation. Participants sat in small groups guided by trained facilitators discussing not only their pain but also their dreams for the future. These sessions often ended with laughter and hugs, proof that connection could heal even the deepest wounds. Another groundbreaking project involved partnering with tech companies to develop tools for accountability. Inspired by the viral video that exposed Harris and Sullivan's actions, Maya worked with developers to create an app called Witness. The platform allowed users to securely record interactions with law enforcement, upload footage directly to independent oversight boards, and access legal resources if needed. Within weeks of its launch, thousands downloaded the app, hailing it as a game-changer in the fight for transparency. Activists praised the innovation, noting that technology could serve as both a shield and a sword in the pursuit of justice. Meanwhile, Mayor Evelyn Thompson's reforms began showing promising results. Crime rates in certain neighborhoods dropped, thanks to increased investment in social services, and surveys indicated growing trust between residents and law enforcement in areas where community policing initiatives were implemented. While critics still argued that reallocating police funds jeopardized public safety, supporters pointed to data proving otherwise. Community leaders credited these changes to the mayor's bold leadership, though Evelyn herself often redirected praise to her daughter. "Maya reminded us that real change starts with listening," she said during a press conference. "She taught this city, and this country, that we can't move forward unless we address the pain of the past." Despite the progress, challenges persisted. Resistance to reform remained strong in some quarters, particularly within entrenched institutions unwilling to adapt. Anonymous threats against Maya and her family continued, forcing them to maintain heightened security measures. Yet, instead of letting fear dictate her actions, Maya chose to lean into her purpose. She traveled extensively, speaking at conferences, universities, and community events, sharing her story and advocating for systemic change. Her speeches resonated deeply, earning her invitations to prestigious platforms like TED Talks and international human rights summits. During one such event, Global Forum on Racial Equity, Maya delivered a powerful keynote address that left attendees speechless. Standing before a diverse audience of activists, policymakers, and scholars, she spoke candidly about the intersection of privilege and oppression. "Being the mayor's daughter didn't shield me from racism," she said, her voice steady, yet passionate. "It simply amplified my ability to demand accountability. But I stand here today knowing that true justice isn't about privilege. It's about ensuring that no one has to rely on privilege to be treated with dignity." Her words earned a standing ovation, solidifying her status as a leading voice in the movement for equality. Back home, Maya focused on nurturing the next generation of leaders. Through Voices Unsilenced, she established mentorship programs connecting young people with seasoned activists, lawyers, and policymakers. Students learned how to draft petitions, organize protests, and engage with elected officials effectively. Many credited these opportunities with helping them find their voices and build confidence in their ability to make a difference. Before I met Maya, I thought activism was something only adults did, said Jamal, a high school senior who became heavily involved in the organization. Now I know anyone can be a change maker. You just have to care enough to try. Autumn approached. Maya returned to Lincoln Park, the place where her journey began. Leaves crunched beneath her feet as she walked along familiar paths, memories flooding back with each step. She paused by the bench where Officers Harris and Sullivan had confronted her, now adorned with flowers and notes left by supporters. Someone had written, "Thank you for being brave," in bold letters on a piece of paper taped to the wood. Maya smiled softly, touched by the gesture. This park, once a symbol of humiliation, had become a testament to resilience, a reminder that even the darkest moments could give rise to light. Later that evening, Maya joined her family for dinner, savoring the simple joy of being together. Her father teased her about her newfound fame, while her mother marveled at how much she had grown over the past year. Friends stopped by, filling the house with laughter and warmth. For a few hours, Maya allowed herself to set aside the weight of her responsibilities and simply enjoy the present moment. Yet even amidst the celebration, she couldn't shake the knowledge that there was still so much work to be done. Looking ahead, Maya envisioned a future where stories like hers weren't necessary to spark change. A future where systemic racism was dismantled, where law enforcement served all communities equally, and where no one had to live in fear of those sworn to protect them. She dreamed of a world where children grew up believing in the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of race or background, and though she knew achieving such a vision would require relentless effort, she believed it was possible, not because she was naive, but because she had witnessed the power of collective action. For Maya, the journey was ongoing. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new reasons to keep fighting. She carried the lessons of her past with her, using them to fuel her determination. Pain had shaped her, yes, but so had hope. Hope that humanity could rise above division. Hope that love could conquer hate. Hope that even in the face of adversity, courage could prevail. And so, Maya Thompson pressed on, her heart full of purpose, and her spirit unyielding. She wasn't just seeking justice for herself or for others who had suffered. She was working toward a legacy of compassion, resilience, and unity. A legacy that said no matter how dark the night, dawn would always break. As she looked toward the horizon, she allowed herself to dream of a brighter tomorrow, knowing she wasn't alone in the fight. Together, step by step, they would build a world worthy of everyone's dignity and worth.